experience here with Bishop Conley, who's for you Kansans, some of you may know him. He was a priest here in Kansas and Wichita, and he was named a bishop, an auxiliary bishop in Denver. And so I've had meetings with him. We've had a great relationship, and he's very supportive, but the church itself is not supportive, and he's not supportive in an official sense. It's very confusing. But my advice to Catholics would be to realize that almost all of the pro-life movement that has been within the Catholic Church has been inspired and led by the lay people, and that bishops will come on board. The Catholic Church, the way it works, through the hierarchy, through these established positions, it's kind of like the Department of State. There are people there who are there longer than the bishop is there. And so to bring about change takes a lot of patience. And, I would point out, I think, what, I don't know where Flip is, but what he was preaching is true. I think it's biblical. And at the same time, it would not work with the bishops. The bishops will not respond to that type of call, of conviction. You need a totally different strategy with Catholics. You need to be respectful and sort of almost, and this for evangelicals or Protestants, but you almost need to bow down to the authority that they have in the position. And you need to work. You need to be incredibly humble. Keep working. I have no doubt that the Catholic Church is going to come around and support this officially and openly. But I honestly don't think they'll do it this time around. I wish they would. We really need their support. But, they're not there yet. So we need to have a sort of an understanding of that we need to build a coalition with people who are with us, but they're not going to work for us. It's a tough thing. As a Catholic especially, to see all my fellow Catholics not being led in the way that they should be. But that we have to accept that as Catholics. I'm telling you, the best approach, and I've had this even from bishops, every bishop, I've met with every bishop in Colorado, and they've all said, we admire you, we admire what you're doing, it's the right thing, keep going, and then they don't support it. So it's frustrating, but I love the bishops, I pray for them, and I think they'll come around. But they will not come around if they see, a sort of aggressive opposition. It's just not the way the Catholic Church works. I like to think of it as a Titanic. It takes a long time to turn the Titanic around, and hopefully we do it before we hit an iceberg. But that's the way the church works. And as a Catholic, I'll stand up and defend my faith a little bit too, not just criticize it. I'd say we avoid a lot of heresy and a lot of mistakes because of it, because we don't make quick turns. So it has its benefits. It's definitely not a benefit to political movements, to political action. But
well, that's just it. The position of the Catholic conferences, and they'll admit it's a political opposition. I mean, they're not against it in principle, and it's very much a political decision. And this is something that also in what you do, you have to work to help people to understand, especially Catholics. Many Catholics don't understand the role of the Catholic Conference. They're not a moral authority. In the strict sense of the term, is the bishops are considered authorities in matters of faith and morals. When it comes to this, they'll admit it's a political position. It's not a position of faith or morals. So a lot of Catholics need to understand that, and that can be part of it. My bishop doesn't support it. Well, that doesn't mean you can't. And your bishop will tell you that. He's not forbidding you from supporting this because you're not going against your faith. You're not going against your morals. It's very much in line with your faith and morals to support this. It's just their political opinion, position, that they're not going to endorse this. And very often it's, well, you don't have the support and you don't have the money, you don't have the funding. Well, you would have the support and the funding if you had the support of the bishops. I mean, in Colorado, many people are willing to give. If the bishops supported it, it would all come in. But people want to be obedient to their bishops. So, go ahead.
I can tell you firsthand, sometimes it's hard for the Catholics because I happen to be Catholic, but I run Sarah's Hope Foundation. We're an interdenominational pro-life group, and they say, oh, you have enough pro-life groups out there, things like that. Go through the Knights of Columbus if you really want to get some results, because they're a Catholic group, very pro-life throughout all the states. So go through the Knights of Columbus, because I can go to Catholic churches and talk to priests, and they won't let me talk in their parish. But I'll go to a Knights of Columbus council, and they'll all let me talk. So Knights of Columbus is the go-through. But I do have a question. Once you define the human being as a person, Planned Parenthood knows they're going to be out of business.
Right.
So how much opposition have you been having from Planned Parenthood?
Well, I mean, they're the primary opposition to this, but I don't.
Directly attacking you, or in different ways, or?
We don't. I mean, Personhood USA was named one of the top 5, top 10 threat. Was it the top 3? Yeah. Well, yeah. Wall of Shame of Narol. Yeah. So, I mean, but I don't. We're not. I mean, that only helps gain our support when Planned Parenthood opposes something like that, at least within the pro-life community, the existing pro-life community. When it comes, though, to people who are on the fence, Planned Parenthood had some, I mean, historically, much better rhetoric. Their rhetoric, their talking points, they propagandize really well and really play to the emotions. And that's something that Personhood puts pro-lifers in the position of being better communicators of the pro-life message. We can reach people who may not be, well, hopefully it does reach people who are not already pro-life. So much of pro-life rhetoric only speaks to the choir. I mean, sanctity of life. No secular person is going to know what you're talking about. They never do. I mean, I used to use that, and people would look at me blankly, like, are you talking about breast cancer walks, or are you talking about, what are you, nobody knew. Personhood is a language of human rights, and that really speaks to everybody. It's a popular thing to be for, human rights, and it's something that's very common sense. So that is a benefit. But when it comes to opposition, in Colorado, there was more in 2008 than there is now. I haven't seen, I mean, Guabe can speak to this better, but go ahead. Yeah.
Experiences. They have lawyers that are much more skilled than I am, and paid about 20 times what I am, and they have about 20 times as many lawyers. And so, if you don't, dot your I's and cross your T's, they'll get you. And so it's very important to get all your legal stuff in order. And even when you do, they'll usually find a judge who's biased enough that he'll get you too. So they are incredibly aggressive. Planned Parenthood and the ACLU, they killed 3 initiatives just this last year, which is demoralizing, but it's also encouraging because, we're sort of that mosquito that keeps biting them, and they keep swatting at us. But a few times when we get through, like in Colorado, we can do a lot of damage, and they know that. They're pledging to fundraise about $1 million in the next couple of weeks to defeat the amendment, and great. Let's spend money on TV advertising instead of on paying abortionists. But yeah, they are fiercely against this. I don't know this for a fact, but I think they have a sort of a group of attorneys that goes after personhood amendments as they pop up. And it's Planned Parenthood and the ACLU, because they always sue on these initiatives, and they sue on the same grounds. And so I know Dr. Thompson had to deal with it, and Alaska had to deal with it, Nevada had to deal with it, and the more they use the courts, the more they impose this type of tyranny, the more active that base becomes. So let's not get discouraged when a judge, slaps us down. People see that, and people react with courage. I just give you one example. I was getting signatures at a Scottish festival about a year ago, and this huge guy in a kilt came up to me, and he was really angry. I think he was probably post-abortive, but he was really, really angry. And it was a state grounds. I was on a sidewalk, and he came up and just started, abusing me verbally, pushing me. But he was out of control, and I stood my ground and told him, well, I'm a lawyer, and I happen to know that I can petition on a public sidewalk, so I'm going to stand here. If you want, go get a policeman, and I'll talk to him. And so he just kept going. He got angrier and angrier, and that's kind of how I see Planned Parenthood. They get angrier and angrier. You know what happened when people saw this big guy in a kilt, trying to beat me up? People came over and started signing the petition. Oh. So they're like, what are you doing? And these are, people at a Scottish festival, so I think they go with the Scottish guy, but they went with the Spaniard. So anyways, that's what courage does. Courage rallies people. That's what personhood does. Even when they strike us down, it rallies people.
Well, and I like to add to that. Sometimes, I guess when people ask me what kind of opposition do you get from Planned Parenthood, is it really fierce? And I'm thinking, trying to think of instances where it's been really bad. Well, I can't, because I like that they're paying attention and that they care and that they're arguing with us, because at least because I want them to argue on personhood. We want them to talk to us about it. So I never thought of that as a negative thing. If we can get them on TV when Christy was debating Fofi, I thought that was amazing, that they were having to argue against every human being being respected as a person. I thought that was fantastic. And they're going to lose, and that's why they fight in the courts, because when it comes to the court of public opinion, they are going up the river. They're swimming upriver against a tide of common sense and justice. So I think it's good. You should look for it. That's why we issue press releases, and we try to say things that'll really get to Planned Parenthood and really get to people, because that's the media. That's when we get it covered. That's when people pay attention. Go ahead.
When the ACLU gets involved, who defends?
Yeah, when the ACLU and Planned Parenthood sue us, usually I'll get an email, and maybe it's Johanna or it's Dr. Thompson, and we'll work together to find a local attorney. And the ADF has been helpful. Sometimes they're a little slow to respond, though. So the Alliance Defense Foundation, and what's that? Oh yeah, and they're very supportive. They do things like issuing letters that when we're petitioning, we can take to pastors, and they say, if you get sued because you're helping us or because you're helping Personhood, and they say you're violating your nonprofit status, we'll come in and help you. And pastors like to have that because they're afraid of that. And so they've helped in the past. We had to fight in Colorado, by the way, the first time around, and we won a unanimous decision at the Supreme Court to petition. And so the second time it was a little easier. So usually I'd say local attorneys, and you can find those through the ADF, there's usually a couple pro-life attorneys in a state, but definitely a local guy or gal, because they need to be involved directly, day to day, responding to memos and to petitions, pleadings. So, but we'll help you with that. That's one of the things that Personhood USA and the American Life League will do, is we'll be there. You send us an email and we'll respond. We're not going to blow you off. So we're like a family. If they come after you, they're coming after us. So.
Mm-hmm.